Considering that Mars is our closest neighboring planet, it's not surprising that there is a ton of science fiction featuring Mars. I've read a lot of it, but not even close to all of it. This TBR list represents some of my gaps. First up is The Martian Inca by Ian Watson, published in 1977. This has been on my radar for a long time. It's a short read, so maybe I'm going to knock it out this year. There's a unique element of first contact that I further find enticing. Two parallel stories are presented. One follows the events that transpire when a Soviet probe returning from Mars crashes into the Andes and kills an entire Bolivian village, save for one man. In the other storyline, two Americans have landed on Mars and are infected by microorganisms, and it has a profound effect on them. For my Mars Week book haul, I have 3 books, and prepping for Mars Week, I knew that a few of the books that I wanted to talk about on the Essential Mars episode and the Mars book recommendation and star ratings episode were books that I haven't read in a long time. You'll see these show up on one of the other Mars Week's episodes. They are Martian Rainbow by Robert L. Forward, Rainbow Mars by Larry Niven, and if you watched Monday's episode, you saw me talk about this very unique read, D.G. Compton's Farewell Earth's Bliss. Back to the TBR. Next up is Mars by Ben Bova. This is one of the more well-known Mars science fiction books that I haven't read. I'm not in a rush to get to it, but I understand it to center on a first-time expedition to Mars and all of the hazards and potential pitfalls of such an endeavor. I'll look forward to seeing what Bova does with the Martian landscape and what challenges the crew might face once they get there. If you've read this and you think I should read it sooner rather than later, please weigh in the comments section. The Secret Life by Paul McCauley, published in 2001. This was recommended to me by somebody in a science fiction book club on Facebook. I immediately get Project Hail Mary and Armageddon vibes. The Goodreads blurb for The Secret Life reads, in 2026, a strange fungus-like organism is growing in the Pacific Ocean, threatening Earth's entire food chain. Christened the Slick, this bizarre life form contains alien DNA that may have come from the planet Mars. To uncover the secret of the Slick, Dr. Mariella Anders is recruited by NASA to join an urgent mission to the Red Planet. I have this on the TBR because I like the Mars connection of something happening here on Earth, and NASA has to send people into space to find a solution. Welcome to Mars by James Blish, published in 1967. I'm getting some have spacesuit will travel vibes with this one, and if you remember on my top 209 science fiction books video, Star Trek Deep Space Nine writer and producer Mark Secree talked about that Heinlein juvenile novel via Cameo. I think it was probably ranked number 208 or 209 on my list. This looks like a survival on Mars story. A genius kid builds a spaceship with a high-speed propulsion drive that gets him to Mars. He gets stranded there. Will this be The Martian and MacGyver on Mars space adventure? I'm gonna find out. The Martian Race by Greg Benford, published in 1999. Burying the lead, so to speak, The Martian Race is my most anticipated Mars TBR title. On one side, there's a Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk type desperate to get a team to Mars. NASA is done with Mars for the foreseeable future, citing enormous costs and a previous lack of success. There's a race to Mars scenario as a Chinese-European contingent with superior nuclear drives are also on the way to Mars in search of a supposed payload that awaits. Throw in a survival story. Those are the best types of Mars stories, I think. And you've got my attention. Born Under Mars by John Bruner, published in 1967. Mars aside, I'm interested in this really because of my affinity for Bruner's The Sheep Look Up and Stand on Zanzibar, 2 absolutely stunning and brilliant novels. I know not to expect the same literary mastery with this earlier work, but I'm no less curious for it. In Born Under Mars, humanity has spread out a bit from Earth in a couple of directions, and as greater powers emerge, the Earth and Mars are caught up in the middle as secret agents from each of the powers go at it. From what I know of the Martian world-building aspects presented is the typical scarcity scenario. Life on Mars is tough, and much happens underground because it's environmentally hostile to humans. Red Dust by Paul J. McCauley, published in 1993. I've heard good things about Red Dust, so maybe this will be my first time around with Paul McCauley. Mars is the star in this far future science fiction adventure. The setting is 600 years in the future, and Mars is in the process of being terraformed. Part of the story includes the protagonist running around the planet trying to build the Martian ecology, specifically by releasing trapped water deposits. Other unique items to expect are Tibetan cultural ideas, mutant dolphins, rock music broadcasted from Jupiter, and technoviruses. I really don't know what to expect, so these are just guesses based on the few reviews that I've read. Before Mars by Emma Neuman. Planetfall by Emma Neuman landed on my radar last year. Before Mars is actually book 3 of the Planetfall series, but I understand that this is the type of series where each book can pretty much stand alone and be read in any order. Full transparency, I do think that I'll end up getting Planetfall first, but you never know. Before is a Mars mystery. Anna is a geologist and a painter, and she's going to Mars. Anna travels 6 months to get there to do research with other geologists and to work on some commissioned artwork. There is a lot of character focus on Anna's state of mind. Some serious themes are touched on, like postpartum depression. This is definitely not something that I've seen show up in science fiction. There's also questions about overall mental state and reality. When she gets to Mars, there's some strange stuff that further makes her question her sanity. Among these things are a letter written to herself in her handwriting that she doesn't remember writing, her wedding ring being replaced with an imposter, and the best kind of hook for me, an untouched, never explored area of Mars that just so happens to have a visible footprint. The Mars Strain by A.C. Anderson, published in 2021. This hits the TBR on 3 marks: new to me author, Mars fiction, and a recent release. I'd like to get more of those things on my 2023 reading. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but here's to wishful thinking. Does anybody know anything about this book? If so, let me know in the comments. This feels like a palate cleanser science fiction to me. A mysterious item is brought back to the Earth from a Mars expedition. Uh-oh, this spreads a nasty plague, a virus, spreading across the Earth and killing efficiently anyone and everyone in its path. Also affected is the colony on Mars, which has to deal with the crisis, as well as other political implications. Ilium by Dan Simmons. File this under no brainer. One of my all-time favorite reads is the Hyperion Cantos. One of the best parts of Hyperion was the presentations of multiple characters and how their stories eventually merge. I know enough to expect something similar in Ilium, expecting also that this is to some extent an Iliad on Mars deal. Let me ask those of you who have read this, do I want to read again the Iliad to refresh myself for greater potential appreciation of Ilium, or not really? In the past, I've avoided this because I assumed it to be more fantasy than science fiction. The sci-fi elements or suggestions that most pique my interest are colonized moons of Jupiter, aliens, sentient AI, and yes, a Trojan-esque horse war on Mars situation. Thank you for watching. I'm Michael Everts, and this is Fit to be Read.
Sometimes I feel like a Martian novella. Sometimes I want aliens attack the red planet I visit with Wells, Dick, and Heyman. So many titles, together let's read.